Hello, my little mathematicians. Today, I'm going to help you get started on C-71. On there, we're going to be going back and forth between a fraction to a decimal and a decimal to a fraction. Now, when you're doing a decimal to a fraction, make sure that you always put your fraction in lowest terms. That means fully reduced. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a few together. From this top section, where you're to write a fraction as a decimal, this is the same as this set right here of 13 through 20. So these are the problems, and these are where you're going to find your answers. So if it has a denominator of 10, it's pretty easy, right? It's 3/10. So that means that however many zeros technically there are, that's how many numbers you want after the decimal. And then whatever your numerator is, that's what goes after the decimal. And then the place value is wherever that 3 is, that's how many zeros there are. And this is read as 3/10. This is read as 3/10, right? Because that's the place value it's in. If for some reason that doesn't make that much sense to you, what always will work is taking that top number and dividing it by the denominator. Okay, so 3 divided by 10. Well, can 10 go into 3? Nope, it can't. It goes in 0 times. So now that you're kind of stuck, let's add a decimal and a 0. Because isn't 3 the same thing as 3.0? Yeah, it is, right? So essentially, I didn't really change the value, but now I can do this division problem of 10 into 30. Just ignore the decimal for now, just bring it up in the answer. See how I just brought it up here? And now when I'm going to do my long division, I can just focus as though it's not there. How many times does 10 go into 30? It goes in 3 times because 10 times 3 is 30. Subtract that, you get a remainder of 0, which means I'm done. If it wasn't, you would just keep adding zeros and bringing them down until you get a remainder of 0. So now that I have 0.3, that means 3 divided by 10, which essentially is what a fraction is saying. It's top divided by the bottom. I know that it's equal to 0.3. Okay, so this will always work. Like for instance, this problem, you have 2, and if you don't know what 3/5 is as a decimal, take the top. Okay, so this is problem number 5. I'm going to take the top number of 3 and divide it by your denominator of 5. Okay, so 3 divided by 5. Can 5 go into 3? Nope, it can't. So let's say it goes in 0 times. And then now what do I do from here? That's right. You're going to add a decimal and a 0. So 5 goes into 30 how many times? 6 times. And 5 times 6 is 30. Subtract that, you get a remainder of 0. So 3/5 is the same thing as 0.6. So 2 and 3/5 is the same thing as 2.6. The whole number can just be brought over. It's only the fraction that we need to change to a decimal. So these two answers right here, let's see if I got them right. If I did, they'd probably be over here. So number 1 is R, 0.3, which means down at the bottom, I'm going to find where 1 is, and I'm going to put an R. And if 1 appears more than once, then just put another R. For 5, let's see, is 2.6 an answer? There it is, an O. Okay, so every time I see a 5, I'm going to put an O there. Okay, now going back to this problem, before I move on to the next section, remember how this one, we did a shortcut? I said you didn't have to do long division. Long division always works to change a fraction to a decimal. You just take the top number divided by the bottom. But if you get it to be a place value of 10, then you can do that shortcut. So for 5, I know that right now it doesn't have a denominator of 10, but think about it. Can I make this denominator become 10? Yeah, you can. If you multiply by what? Hopefully you said 2. Okay, so 5 times 2 is 10, so let's multiply the top by 2. What's 3 times 2? 6. So 6/10 is equivalent to 3/5, right? They're equal to each other because I multiplied them both the top and bottom by the same number, and anything over itself is just 1. So essentially, I multiplied 3/5 by 1. So now that you have 6/10, I have it with a 10 in my denominator, so I know that 6/10 is the same thing as 0.6, and my whole number 2 just goes in front. So you could have done this problem this way, getting a denominator of 10 and then moving straight from that fraction to your decimal, okay? But again, you can always fall back on doing long division. Long division will always work and get you to that decimal. Okay, this one is much nicer. When I want to go from a decimal to a fraction, the whole number just goes in front, and then that decimal is essentially going to be your fraction. So 0.2, that's the same thing as 2/10. I literally just said the fraction. 2/10. How did I know that? Well, whatever's after the decimal, that's your numerator. And then however many numbers are after the decimal, that's how many zeros you have there, replacement holders. Okay? Now, the only trick to this is you want to make sure that those fractions are fully reduced. So can 2/10 reduce? Yeah, by what? Yep, 2 can go in. Okay, so 2 divided by 2 is what? 1. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Perfect. Okay, and then just bring that whole number over. So now you have 8 and 1/5 is the same thing as 8 and 2/10, which is the same thing as 8.2 or 8 and 2/10. Find that over here, and notice how it has this weird bubble right here. That just means that when you find the number 10 down below, I want to shade it in. So number 10 right here, I'm going to shade that box in, which probably means that's separating one word from another. Okay, and that's how you fill out the riddle and do your answers. If there's some where you need to do work on a separate sheet of paper, try to do them in order if possible, and always make sure you label that separate sheet of paper. Um, this section is just like the first section we did, and this bottom section is just like this one. All right, my little mathematicians, you got this. You're going to do amazing.